this is actually incredibly significant. These relationships, having them and then also losing them and working through that.
This won't change overnight. It's not that we're saying get the neighbor to get them outside or encourage them to go and see their friends again. That won't immediately get them out of maybe a more ruminative thinking style or the sadness and grief of the breakup. That really will take time, but we just want to interrupt the perseverative thinking that is keeping them stuck. Okay, Suzanne, we got a listener question this week that I think is a very common one this time of year. So let's jump right into it.
All right.
Dear parenting pair, my 15-year-old son's girlfriend broke up with him about 3 weeks ago, and he kind of seems to be spiraling. They dated for just 2.5 months, but this was his first girlfriend, and he really liked her. He's staying in his room a lot and keeps replaying in his mind what happened in the days leading up to the breakup. He wants to know why it happened. I really don't think that he's accepted that it's over. I try to talk to him and be supportive, but it's like nothing I say is valid in his eyes, and he just gets mad and says I can't help. What should I do? Right. The heartbreak, it's so real.
It is real.
You know, and so difficult. Just really difficult.
Yeah, I know. I can think back to breakups or relationships where I really wanted to be in one with someone and they were done with it, and how much time that occupied in my mind.
Yeah.
How sad I was, how just like waiting for the phone to ring, hoping it would ring.
Wondering what's going on, wondering if the other person cares. And just, I think for a lot of teens, breakups like this, and particularly in this question, it's for a young man, can be just their first, for many kids, their first real experience of grief and loss.
Yeah.
And when you're at a time in your life when your emotions are so raw and big, right? You're in that brain development stage where you feel things so intensely, to then go through grief and loss with someone who still exists somewhere but is maybe choosing not to be with you can feel really devastating.
Really devastating. And then as a parent, right, I really felt for this mom, like it is so hard to watch someone you love, especially your child, really suffer and struggle in this way. And then we layer on top that during the teenage years, there's a lot of expectations upon them. There's a lot of things that need to happen in terms of school and life and jobs,
right.
So I think sometimes for parents too, that can add that pressure of absolutely they deserve and need the time to grieve this loss. But, the final exams are coming up, or the applications for summer jobs are coming too, right? And it's that parenting, like, we've got to still function. And of course, you feel totally devastated.
So what you're highlighting there is sort of the grief that the teenager's experiencing who's going through the breakup, also balanced, which is very emotional, also balanced with the emotions of the parent, trying to help that teen move forward at the same time. So there's a lot of stress there and a lot of emotions there, And I'd, just like to highlight, I think when breakups can happen, sometimes parents see emotion in their kids at levels they've never seen before, right? So it might be, a boy or a young man, like in this circumstance, who's maybe staying in his bed sobbing and sobbing. And say it will never get better, right? And those sorts of, when parents see that, it can be very jarring and scary to them. So they're scared that, the boy is grieving and he's sad. And so it's a lot. Right?
Absolutely.
And so let's just normalize that this is how it can look for people. And so I think if this is what's going on, what can mom do? Right? And I think, in the beginning, it's really just acknowledging and maintaining sort of an open and supportive stance for how hard it is, right?
Yep. And I know we say this a lot, kind of creating space or allowing for, right? Like, this is just where he is right now. And while it is painful and difficult to watch, I can be supportive and kind of allow for this. Like, whatever the reaction is, whatever the grief expression is, let it be that.
And I love what you said, allowing for this, because really that's saying, I'm going to be with you in this moment and acknowledge this moment without kind of trying to immediately move the moment. You'll find another girlfriend. It's, it will be okay. And down the line, he probably will find another girlfriend. And there are moments to, put those ideas out there. But when we're in the beginnings of grief, he won't want to hear that, or he'll probably just agitate, the situation. And it's always helpful to reflect on what you would want. If you as an adult have been through some sort of loss or grief or breakup in your life, and remember back to what that felt like, and immediately someone telling you to change how you're feeling probably would not, or inadvertently minimizing like the loss would not make you feel better.
Yeah. And sometimes that really comes from like trying to paint a picture that there's hope for your future, right?
Yes.
Parents saying like, this is really significant. I know how much this is hurting you. And I know that you're going to meet lots of different people in your life, or things are going to feel different in the future. Those aren't bad statements to make, but if you're sensing a reaction to those, and especially kind of in the very beginning, you can get there. We want to help kids hold out hope that they're not always going to feel the way they feel right in the moment that the crisis happens, or within the first few days or weeks of it. But sometimes we have to kind of resist that a little bit and start to sprinkle that in over time. And that's kind of gauging it with your teen. I don't think there's a secret recipe for this. It's not like 1 week after breakup, you can say this. I wish we could give that to you. I think that's knowing your child or teen and like experimenting. If you start to say something and it looks like their back's coming up, or they're like, you don't get it, okay, they might not be ready for that hope-building, future-building statement yet.
And so and that's when you might go over to, instead of sort of talking or problem solving immediately, just doing, and we've talked about this in other podcasts.
Yeah.
Maybe offer their favorite dinner, maybe encourage them to take a walk with you, or if there's a new movie going out, maybe, maybe doing things that, where you can be with your child to the degree they're willing to let you, but not necessarily be problem solving or providing that hope for the future if they're not really ready for it.
Yeah. It can feel so caretaking and kind. I remember my dad when I was little, if we were ever homesick for the day, he would always come home with like a candy bar for whoever had been homesick. And most of the time you couldn't eat it that day because you weren't feeling well. But it was such a nice thing. And it was very sweet. Like he sometimes kind of did that as we were older. And it just, there was something like, something bad happened and you got a candy bar,
And it doesn't solve the problem.
Not even close.
But it's acknowledging you're going through something.
Yeah.
And here you are sitting,
I'm thinking
before
of
me,
Here's your favorite chocolate bar.
Talking, but you remember this at this stage of life with teenagers yourself. You remember that. And so sometimes that's really all we can do,
Yeah.
And the trajectory here that we'd imagine is that slowly over time, these heightened emotions will come down, will sort of, and slowly, with maybe your gentle guidance, you can encourage him to go out and see his friends or do things. And hopefully over time, this will begin to dissipate and he'll begin to see that hope for his future himself, or begin to engage, get out of the crisis heightened emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes people, or teenagers, any of us, can get stuck in kind of a loop of overthinking, just thinking about it and replaying and discussing it. And why did this happen? Or if I had only done this. And if you notice over time, and I don't mean in the first week or two, but 3, 4, 5 weeks in, we're still just in that loop, that may be sort of shifting over into kind of a ruminative or ruminating thinking style, and that can become a problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think of it this way for myself, but I describe this to teens also when they're like, what is rumination?
Yeah.
Have you ever found yourself chewing gum past the point where it actually tastes good,
Right.
and you like maybe because there's no trash can around, or maybe you got distracted by something else. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, this is like dry. There's no juice left in it. Like, what am I doing here? That's a little bit like rumination. The thing that you're stuck on, the heartbreak, the loss. Why did this person end the relationship with you? Like, what's going on here, right? It can be like we're just chewing this over and over and over, and we're getting nothing really out of it except staying with this dry, over chewed piece of information or heartbreak or loss.
Right. I love that metaphor, analogy, whatever it is. We never know. So any English teacher that's listening could please tell us.
What help us?
I think it's a metaphor. But anyway, it really just that kind of thinking keeps you focused on how badly you feel. instead of any sort of movement forward or any sort of problem solving.
Mhm.
And that's why, we want to kind of watch out for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And, we're CBT therapists, right? So always talking about the connection between how we think, how we feel, what we do. What I'll say to young people or to parents is that chewing and chewing, the thinking and thinking and thinking, we're doing way too much thinking here.
Yeah.
We need to get a little bit more balance of some other things, right? Because thinking is good. It's helpful. Sometimes we turn a problem over in our head, right? We do a little problem solving, little Rubik's Cube kind of focusing like, oh, what should I go? What should I do?
And sometimes that works. Like sometimes you focus on the Rubik's Cube.
You fiddle and you fiddle.
You fiddle and fiddle and you get a side. So it's like, okay, I've gotten somewhere. But if you're fiddling and fiddling and fiddling and
you're
never getting anywhere.
Around.
Right. Then at a point,
put it down for a bit, step away, do something else.
And that's where it's like that balance of not just the thinking, but the thought and action.
Yes, because that tendency to ruminate or get stuck in rumination, not be aware of it and kind of keep going with it, we know is what sometimes can lead to depression or maintain depression.
Right. And we want to, try to avoid that for sure. And I think that's why we start with just kind of, encouraging the mom to maybe get this, young man to do, little things. If your, son is getting stuck in this kind of like terrible zone of this is never going to get better, then I think we're going to push a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
Let's take that walk, right? Let's get, I see you're really getting stuck here. I really think it's time to come out of your room and, return to, I don't know, the Friday night, hang out with your guy friends or whatever the thing is, and sort of, push a little bit more. Because I think, and not, even if he's not ready to go to, different problem solving or seeing, true hope for his future, getting out of that thought process is the first step to really beginning to feel better and move on.
Mm-hmm. And, I think like you're saying that kind of pushing a little bit, that can be done with love and care.
Sure.
And I know we've said this statement before, but, I love you too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love you too much to let you keep staying in bed or not responding to friends, and explaining why rumination is so problematic, really trying to give little nuggets of information here. And so this is why I'm pushing, because too much of this overthinking, too much of this inaction and kind of staying here stuck in this is not going to help you in any way. And I love you too much to watch you suffer like this and not try to offer something.
100% to help. And sometimes you can make that explicit if your teenager is willing to hear that. And sometimes it might be, you know what, I actually need you to come help me wash the car right now because I can't do it. Or can you help me lift this thing down that I can't get? Just to get that movement. You don't have to always call attention to, maybe the problematic thinking style that your teenager may be in.
A family member or neighbor or someone like that, your teen might be more willing or feel badly if they didn't help them, right? Like a neighbor
That's
who
a great idea.
To babysit, the coach who wants them, can you talk to the coach and be like, can you get him to start managing the equipment too, right? Like for a time period, whatever. Like sometimes other people may be more motivating to your teen in that moment. They might be less likely to want to disappoint them or say no for whatever reason. So you don't always have to be the one to activate them. If you can kind of find other resources to maybe tap into sometimes, the church youth group needs them for something,
right?
Whatever it might be.
Right. And we have to remember, this won't change overnight. It's not that we're saying get the neighbor to get them outside or encourage them to go and see their friends again. Even if they do that once, that won't immediately get them out of maybe a more ruminative thinking style or, the sadness and grief of the breakup. That really will take time. But we just want to interrupt the kind of perseverative thinking that is keeping them stuck. And so we want to think about this as sort of parenting for the long haul, and not that if we get out once or twice in a week, everything's going to be different and he'll be like he used to be when he was dating the girl or before he met her, right? But it's all about steps towards that healing that I think we're really, talking about here. I also think it's relevant just to say to normalize this. Interpersonal stressors are really the triggers for just under or about 50% of first depressive episodes in teens, right? So it's for those teens, not all teens who go through breakups will become depressed or even will have a ruminative thinking style. But if you see that pattern start to develop and still be there a month later, maybe 6 weeks later, we might be on a path towards becoming depressed. And that's really common because relationships and being connected to people and becoming independent and separated from your family is so important during this time. So it can feel really crushing. So I just want to normalize that, that there's not something wildly wrong. This is a part of their development.
Yeah. And not a sign of, weakness or something, like that. Like, this is actually incredibly significant, these relationships, having them and then also losing them and working through that. And, sometimes these things, if both of them, I don't know if he and his girlfriend are in the same friend group.
Oh.
There's so many things that can get disrupted, and it takes time to shift and kind of reorganize your life without that person. Maybe they had concert tickets together. There's all these different things. And so sometimes you might see a little progress, or they have some good moments or days, and then there's a backward slide. And that's normal too. We don't always kind of move upwards in a trajectory and keep going in that way. We have our ups and downs.
And in the spirit of what you're talking about there, Suzanne, it also can be helpful not only to encourage action on the part of, the person going through the breakup, but also reminding your son, if your son's in this circumstance like this mom's question, of the need for boundaries. It can feed ruminations if you're checking social media and still connected to the person that you were dating, right? And you may get stuck in the loop. Oh, well, she's over here now, or he's over there now. Why am I not invited? Or life will never be good because I'm not able to go to that party because she's there. Whatever. Sometimes encouraging kids maybe unfollowing that person or putting that person on mute for a while. I forget the right term for that on Instagram. There's something.
I think like it's mute. Yeah.
Whatever it is. So you're not receiving those messages. And that can be very hard for teens. Sometimes they feel like, well, I don't want it to look like I can't handle it, or I don't want them to know I unfollowed them. And it's like at a point we have to kind of, put your feeling better before those worries.
Sometimes even setting boundaries with friends too. Like, I've had teens who their friends, in an effort to be helpful, are reporting on what the ex is doing, or what's going on, or continue. And so sometimes I've coached young people to talk to their friends of like, hey, you know what? Like, I kind of don't want to talk about her for a while. Like can we switch the topic to something else? Like, it just makes me annoyed. They may not want to say like, I'm heartbroken, I'm upset, but
right.
It's annoying to keep talking about her.
And they can say that even if inside they really do want to know where she is and what she's doing and what's going on. It's okay for them to kind of, act opposite to what their emotional urge is and say that to their friends to kind of help them, move through it and heal. Right? So know that this can take time. Know that interpersonal stressors are a significant trigger for ruminative thinking, chewing that piece of gum, as Suzanne said, over and over again. And know that they're going to come through it, right? There are times, though, that we just want to watch out for, right? If the rumination stays and they really sort of head towards more of a depression, that's when you might want to reach for help, right? So if we're really not, after 4 or 6 weeks, moving in a direction of getting out a bit more, engaging in life, a bit more, we're concerned about that.
Yeah. Increasing isolation, right? Pulling back from people, or maybe activities or things that they had previously enjoyed or were interested in.
And any other significant notable changes, like suddenly they're not sleeping, or suddenly they're not, or sleeping a lot, or they're not eating, or eating way more than usual, or just signs of significant hopelessness about their future. Those sorts of things. And of course, if any, thoughts of suicide or thoughts of death were mentioned, those would be times when you'd want to reach out, to a mental health professional. Certainly you can talk to a school counselor just to get some support, additional support for them. I mean, I guess that's our what now, right? What is our what now, Suzanne? I think it's hard to be a teenager. It's really hard to be a teenager. I remember 2 breakups in particular and how devastating they were. And I remember even things that weren't breakups, but that led to such grief that was so intense, in the teenage years and early 20s, that just had me crying and, so very upset. But your kid will move through.
You know what? I actually think maybe that's our what now is for every parent. I don't know if you agree with this, so we'll do this live. to think about a breakup or a loss of friendship in those teen years, that was really significant. Just to go back to that, because I think sometimes when I can reconnect to some of the feelings or behaviors maybe I engaged in after a breakup, or when I really liked someone and they didn't like me back, like I can feel it again. And I think it helps me open up and have more willingness to kind of let my kids have those experiences.
To watch and sit with someone else's pain.
Yeah.
I think that as you suggested we do that, it brought me back to a social event that happened in my group of friends after I went through a very significant breakup. And I placed myself in my childhood home in the bathroom, sobbing for 4 hours because I didn't go, because I didn't think I could handle it. And everyone else went, and my ex-boyfriend was there. And I was sobbing, and I felt so hurt that no one else was caring about me because I was at home. But I think about my parents, what they must have thought with the wailing. Now, as a grown adult, I know I'm fine. I moved through that period. But what that must have looked like and sounded like for just one night that I wasn't able to go hang with my friends could be really extreme. And I think just keeping those things in mind and having a little patience, with yourself and your teen, that it can be this hard. And it would be very easy, I think, for an adult to come and say, it's going to be okay. Like, this is really,
get it together.
Yeah, get it together.
Or be freaking out. Like,
right. What's
wrong? What's wrong? They've never acted like this before. Right. I can see it kind of going, and especially depending on which kid, right? Like I think in my household, like I think different reactions. Some I might expect that more and want to downplay it, and others I might be really jarred by seeing that level of emotion.
Right. But then we move through it, and sometimes you have to release that. And again, at that age, the emotions are so intense. The perspective taking you have when you go through a breakup and you're deeply sad, but you're breaking up at 30 or 25, and you know that this isn't the right person or this is the right choice. You tend to be very sad, but maybe, respond to your emotions a little differently. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
With that, have a great week, right?
Yeah.
If you know anyone who's broken up or has a child going through this, pass this along to them.
Yeah.
We all need a little support. Have a great week.